My best friend borrowed money to start a business, then disappeared without paying me back. I trusted him, not because he was perfect or flawless, but because we had been best friends for years. Years of shared experiences, late night talks, promises, and plans. He was the person I turned to when things got tough, and I believed he felt the same about me. So when he told me he wanted to start a business, I didn't hesitate for a second. He had a vision, ideas that excited him, a bit of savings, but nowhere near enough to get it off the ground. He asked me for help. He asked me to lend him money, a lot of money, enough to cover rent for a space, buy equipment, pay suppliers, and do some marketing to get customers in the door. He promised it would be temporary, just until he got on his feet. I didn't ask for contracts, paperwork, or collateral. I didn't want to. I wanted to believe in him, to be the friend who helped, to be the one who made a difference. At first, everything seemed promising. He was full of energy and excitement. He called me often with updates, ideas, plans, and even some early wins. He talked about meetings he had with potential clients, partnerships he was exploring, and new products he wanted to launch. I didn't see the business itself, no photos, no visits, but I trusted him. I trusted his words, his enthusiasm, his dreams. I believed he was working hard every day, and I believed the money was being used exactly as promised. Then things started to change. The calls slowed, the messages became fewer and less detailed. Days, sometimes weeks, would pass without any news. When I finally heard from him, his replies were vague, full of excuses. Problems with suppliers, delays in permits, unexpected costs, health issues, bad luck. He reassured me he was still committed, still pushing forward, still hoping for success. I told myself everyone faces obstacles, setbacks, delays. So I waited. I stayed patient. But the silence grew heavier. Weeks passed. I grew worried. I reached out to mutual friends, trying to find out if anyone had seen him or knew about the business. Some said he was quiet, withdrawn, distracted. Others said he avoided talking about the business or his plans. I kept trying to call him, text him, message him. I needed answers. But the answers never came. One day, after months of silence and excuses, I asked him directly, "Is the business actually up and running?" His answer was a simple yes. He said he was close to making the first sale. He said I'd be the first to know when the money started coming in, but that was months ago. My trust began to fracture. I felt like I was holding onto a promise that was slipping away. I hadn't demanded the money back yet, but the thought crept into my mind. What if it was all a lie? What if there was no business at all? I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to lose him, my best friend, the person I trusted most. But the silence spoke louder than any explanation. It screamed more than any excuse. I remember the last time we met before everything fell apart. It was at a small coffee shop, nothing special. He looked tired, worn down, like he was carrying a weight I couldn't see. He avoided eye contact. When I asked how things were going, he shrugged and said, "It's complicated." No details, no plans, no hope. That was the last conversation we had. After that day, he disappeared. No calls, no texts, no replies. I tried reaching out through other friends. Nobody knew where he was or what he was doing. The business. Apparently, it never launched. I felt betrayed, used, not just for the money, but for the trust I gave him without hesitation. The years of friendship suddenly felt like a lie. I wondered if I had been naive to believe in him. Sometimes late at night, I replay every conversation, every promise in my mind. I try to pinpoint the moment when it all went wrong, but there isn't one. Just silence. Just distance. The hardest part was not knowing why he vanished, where the money went, or if he ever intended to pay me back. The uncertainty ate away at me more than the loss itself. Sometimes I wonder if he's out there living his dream, using the money I gave him, or if he's just disappeared into nothingness. Either thought hurts equally. What would you do if your best friend borrowed money and vanished without a trace? Would you forgive and forget, or would you cut ties and move on? Drop your thoughts below. After months of waiting and hoping for any kind of progress or even a sign that things were moving forward, the silence became unbearable. At first, the calls slowed down gradually, from daily updates to weekly, then to less and less until they stopped completely. Messages that used to be answered within hours were suddenly left unread for days, then weeks. I was desperate to hear something, anything, that would reassure me the business was still alive, that the money I lent him wasn't wasted or lost, that there was still a chance to get it all back someday. But those moments became fewer and farther between, and the uncertainty started to gnaw at me every day. I reached out through mutual friends and acquaintances, hoping someone might have information. Some said they saw him around, but he seemed withdrawn, distracted, avoiding social situations and questions about the business. Others said he was nervous and stressed, like someone trying to hide something or avoid trouble. Nobody had seen any signs of an actual business. No shop, no office, no equipment being set up, no customers, nothing. It was like he'd disappeared from the professional world completely, leaving only rumors and unanswered questions behind. When he did reply, which became increasingly rare, his answers were vague and full of empty promises. He claimed that things were moving, that he was close to a breakthrough, that success was just around the corner. But those words felt hollow, like they were designed to placate me and delay the inevitable confrontation. I began to feel like I was chasing smoke, trying to hold on to something that was slipping through my fingers, something that might never have existed in the first place. I started asking more direct questions, questions that demanded real answers. Where exactly was the business located? Could I visit? Who were the clients? What products or services was he offering? Instead of answering, he would change the subject, avoid the question, or give incomplete stories that didn't add up. I pushed harder because I needed to know the truth, but the harder I pressed, the more distant and evasive he became. It was as if every question chipped away at the facade until he was forced to retreat deeper into silence. Little by little, pieces of the truth started to leak out through the grapevine. A mutual friend told me she'd seen him at a bar looking stressed and distracted, nothing like the ambitious entrepreneur he claimed to be. Another friend mentioned that he hadn't been attending meetings or networking events he had once bragged about. Some said he missed deadlines and disappeared from the social circles that had supported his venture at the start. The more I heard, the more it seemed like the business was nothing more than a mirage, a story spun to keep me hopeful and willing to lend more. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't just about the money, although the financial loss was significant. It was about the trust that had been broken, the friendship that suddenly felt like a lie. Years of shared memories, support, and promises were suddenly overshadowed by silence and excuses. I felt foolish for believing in him, for standing by his side while he spun stories that led nowhere. I didn't give up easily. I tried one last time to get answers and closure. I showed up unannounced at locations he had mentioned as part of his business. Empty offices with locked doors, abandoned workspaces with no equipment or staff, and quiet streets with no sign of any enterprise. Each visit chipped away at any hope I had left. I confronted him when I finally got hold of him, demanding honesty. He responded with excuses, blaming bad luck, unreliable suppliers, people who didn't support him, and a series of unfortunate events that piled up. But he never admitted the truth, never confessed to misusing the money or abandoning the project. He avoided my gaze and shifted blame without ever taking responsibility. And then he vanished completely. His phone went off. His social media profiles disappeared. All channels of communication were cut off without warning. I was left in the dark, grappling with unanswered questions, a gaping hole where a friendship once stood, and the sting of betrayal that seemed impossible to heal. The hardest part was not knowing why he disappeared, what happened to the money, or if he ever intended to pay me back. The uncertainty ate at me more than the loss itself. It consumed my thoughts and cast a shadow over my daily life. Sometimes I would find myself replaying every conversation, every promise, searching desperately for signs I might have missed, clues that could explain the collapse. But there was nothing, just silence and absence. Sometimes I wonder if he's out there, living a new life with the money I gave him, free from the consequences, or if he's simply disappeared, lost in his own failures and regrets. Either thought is painful. The months after he vanished were some of the hardest I've ever experienced. Not just because of the money, though losing that was a big blow, but because of the emptiness he left behind. It wasn't just a financial loss. It was a deep personal betrayal from someone I trusted completely. A friend who vanished, leaving silence and unanswered questions in his place. Every call I made went straight to voicemail. Every message left unread. His social media accounts wiped clean like he'd erased himself from existence. I tried everything I could think of to find him and get some answers. I hired a private investigator who searched public records, phone listings, business registrations, anything that might lead to a trace. The search came up empty. No new businesses registered under his name. No rental agreements or property records. No new phone numbers or emails. It was like he dissolved into thin air, like he'd never existed outside outside the lies he told me. I wanted justice, or at least closure, so I spoke to lawyers. But without any contract, no paperwork, no signed agreement, just a handshake between friends, my legal options were limited. The loan was informal, and courts told me it would be nearly impossible to recover anything. Chasing someone who disappeared without a trace was a losing battle. There was no money trail, no proof of intent to repay, no way to force action. All this legal frustration mixed with emotional pain. I was angry, deeply angry. Angry at him for betraying me. Angry at myself for trusting too easily. Angry at a system that didn't protect me when it should have. Sadness overwhelmed me sometimes, and nights were the worst. The house was too quiet, and memories haunted every room. Disbelief settled in too. How could someone I cared about so much just vanish without a word? But amid the storm of feelings, something else took root. A stubborn determination not to let this betrayal define me. I refused to be a victim. I refused to let this break me. I wanted to rebuild, to grow stronger from the wreckage. I started with practical steps. I reviewed my finances, cut unnecessary expenses, and focused on saving what I had left. I surrounded myself with people who supported me unconditionally. Family, old friends, colleagues. Their faith gave me strength when I wanted to give up. Then I made a bold choice. I decided to start my own business, not out of spite or to prove anything to him, but to reclaim my life and my power. I invested what I had, educated myself, and threw every ounce of energy into building something real. It wasn't easy. Setbacks came fast and hard. Doubts crept in. Moments when failure seemed certain, but with each small victory, a new client, a good review, a steady income, I rebuilt my confidence and my future. A year passed. The business grew steadily. I hired my first employee, opened a small office, learned to balance growth with patience. The pain of betrayal never fully disappeared, but it became manageable. A quiet reminder of lessons learned the hard way. And still, no contact, no apology, no explanation. Just a void where a friendship once was. His silence spoke volumes. Sometimes I wonder where he is, what he's doing, if he's haunted by the choices he made, but I don't dwell on it. I focus on my life, my goals, my happiness. This story isn't about revenge. It's not about punishment or drama. It's about loss, resilience, and moving forward when the people you trusted the most turn their backs on you.